At Thanksgiving dinner, they handed me a paper napkin, while everyone else had their names embroidered in gold. That's how little they thought of me. What they didn't know was that I'd been secretly paying their bills for 5 years. "Hi, I'm Lauren." They called me a burden, a failure, said I was probably living off welfare. But the truth? Every sip of their wine, every bite of their expensive meal that night, it was on me. And when I told them, their silence said everything. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now, let's start the story together. I pulled into the driveway 10 minutes later than I meant to. The rain had started to mist, turning the windshield into a watercolor blur of porch lights and autumn leaves. I turned off the engine and sat still for a beat. The house glowed like a magazine spread, every window lit, every line neat. I adjusted the collar of my jacket and stepped out. The front door was already cracked open, probably from Jason coming in and forgetting to pull it shut. Inside, warmth hit me immediately, followed by the clatter of cutlery and the low hum of wine-fueled conversation. It smelled like rosemary, cinnamon, and something richer. Probably the truffle mashed potatoes Emily always insisted on, her signature touch. No one looked up when I entered. I closed the door quietly and hung my coat on the same hook I always used, the one closest to the stairs. A faint reflection of myself flashed in the hallway mirror. My hair, a little frizzy from the drizzle, blazer slightly creased from the seatbelt. Not terrible, just not polished. "Lauren," Dad called from the dining room without turning. "Thought you weren't coming." "I'm here," I said simply, walking toward the glow of the chandelier. The dining table looked like something out of a catered wedding. Long mahogany, dressed in deep cream linens and gold-accented plates. Everyone was seated. Emily to the left of Dad, Jason to the right, Evan beside Emily. The only seat left was at the very end, closest to the swinging door that led to the kitchen. I walked to it, the scrape of my shoes quiet on the floor. As I pulled back the chair, my eyes caught the napkins. Each one was folded into a triangle, thick and embroidered. Jason's had a little J. Emily's was full script, of course. Even Dad's said Howard in navy thread. Mine? A half-used sheet of paper towel torn unevenly, folded once and dropped beside my plate. I stared at it. No one said a word. The silence around it was louder than anything they could have joked. I didn't touch it, just sat down and adjusted my chair quietly. Emily was mid-story about her firm's acquisition strategy, swirling a glass of Pinot like she'd rehearsed. "So the Seattle team flew in just for me," she said, her tone effortless. "We finalized the pitch deck in under 3 hours." "Impressive," Dad said, leaning back. "That's the kind of execution I admire." Jason nodded absently, scrolling on his phone beneath the table. "You know," Emily added, turning toward me with a perfectly polite smile, "not everyone's made for the grind. At least you've got free time, huh? Government must love you." I smiled faintly and reached for my glass. "Water with lemon," I told the waiter. When it arrived, I let the chill of it rest on my tongue before swallowing. "Still sober?" Jason said with a chuckle. "Nice, sis. Clean living." No one asked what I'd been working on. No one noticed the slight callus on my right hand from typing late into the night, or the faint ink smudge still on my wrist from yesterday's whiteboard brainstorm. They assumed I had time. They assumed I had nothing else to do. Between bites, the conversation meandered from Emily's travel plans to Evan's college applications. Dad threw in a few anecdotes from his golfing trip in Scottsdale. I watched, listened, didn't interrupt. The noise was familiar, rehearsed. Dinner ended with creme brulee. Emily waved down the server for the check, her manicure flawless. "I've got it," she chirped. "Don't worry, Dad. One day Lauren can treat us once she's back on her feet." That was the moment. I placed my spoon gently down and looked at the server. "It's already paid for," I said, my voice even. Emily blinked. "Paid? By who?" "House account," I replied, still calm. Dad frowned. House account? What's that supposed to mean? I picked up the folded paper towel, held it between two fingers. If you think I'm the dependent one, I said quietly, looking directly at him, you might want to check who's been paying your utilities. Silence dropped like fog. Forks paused mid-air. Jason glanced up from his phone. Emily's smile faltered. Dad didn't say a word. Only Evan looked at me, really looked. His brows furrowed slightly like he was putting something together for the first time. I folded the napkin neatly and left it on the edge of my plate. The server came by with to-go boxes. No one reached for dessert. I stood, smoothed my jacket, and gave the server a nod on my way out. The air outside was damp again, cool against my cheeks. As I crossed the front porch, I heard the clink of glasses behind me, but no voices. When I got to my car, I paused, one hand on the door. Behind the windshield, my reflection hovered faintly again. I didn't look like the girl they saw, and maybe I never had. I got in, started the engine, and didn't turn on the radio. As I pulled out, I caught one last glimpse of the house glowing in the rearview mirror. Evan had walked to the front window. He wasn't looking at the others. He was looking at me. And this time, he didn't look away. They thought I quit because I couldn't handle it. Burnout, maybe, or personal drama. But the truth is, I left because I had already started building something they couldn't see. In late 2017, I gave my 2 weeks' notice at a logistics analytics firm downtown. No big send-off, no farewell cupcakes, just a polite email and a quiet exit on a Tuesday afternoon. I walked out with a reusable grocery bag, 2 notebooks, and the last check I'd ever cash with someone else's logo at the top. That same evening, I drove across town to the southeast edge of Portland, where the sidewalks crack and warehouses lean like they're tired of standing. The building was beige-gray, flaking paint, 2 broken exterior lights. It smelled like old sawdust and machine oil when I first stepped in. The lease was short-term, the ceilings were high, and the heat didn't work, but it was mine. I brought in a folding table from my dad's garage and a used swivel chair I found on Craigslist. The first night, I sat on the floor with a space heater buzzing beside me and scribbled names into a notebook. Business names, dummy clients, LLC ideas. I'd read somewhere that people take you more seriously when your email ends in something corporate-sounding. So I registered a shell firm, Logicore Group. By day, I watched YouTube tutorials on logistics algorithms. By night, I wrote Python scripts with fingers stiff from the cold. I bought whiteboards off clearance racks, wiped them with kitchen towels, drank more gas station coffee than I care to admit. Some days I sent 20 cold emails and got 0 replies. Others, I got one maybe. In early 2018, I met Tasha at a startup networking mixer held inside a converted laundromat. She was managing ops at a small local distributor and gave me a chance to run a back-end audit tool. I stayed up 3 nights straight writing that tool. It worked. From there, word crept slowly. Not loudly, not virally, just quietly among managers who needed results more than they needed credentials. Freight, regional supply chains, mid-tier warehousing firms. They didn't care that Logicore had no real staff, no front office. They just liked that our code predicted which trucks would be late before anyone else saw it coming. I still went to family dinners, showed up in slacks, brought store-bought pie. Emily would talk about her big accounts, and I'd smile and nod. Dad would ask how the job hunt was going. I'd say, still looking, and he'd offer a brochure from someone he'd met at Rotary. On Thanksgiving 2019, Emily asked if she could see what I'd been tinkering with. I gave her a cleaned-up version of the pitch deck I'd used to land our 3rd client, a mid-size freight operation in Spokane. I took out the specific branding and client data, left just the flow, problem, model, result. Looks clean, she said, flipping through the pages like she might be bored. Interesting logic. I didn't think much of it after. I went back to the warehouse, back to writing predictive models and troubleshooting server lag with budget hosting tools. The heater still barely worked, but I'd upgraded the chair. Then, in March of 2020, I saw the post. Emily had shared it on LinkedIn, a black and gold slide deck with a bold serif font. The layout looked eerily familiar. So did the graphs. The language had changed just enough to look original. "Grateful to my team for trusting my vision," she wrote. "Excited to see this solution come to life." My chest tightened. I clicked through each slide. My logic model was there under a new name, the same sequence. Even the diagram I'd hand-sketched during a weekend planning session. I looked for a mention, a footnote. Nothing. 2 weeks later, Dad raised his wine glass at Sunday dinner. "To Emily," he said, "for delivering a major breakthrough at her firm." That's what real strategy looks like. Jason clapped lazily. Mom had already passed away by then, but her old seat still sat empty. I remember the way Emily tilted her head, modest, performative. She didn't say it was mine, and I didn't say otherwise. I smiled, took a sip of wine I didn't like, and stared down at the linen tablecloth. That night, I returned to the warehouse and pulled up the original files, code snippets, timestamps, email threads, all of it backed up to a folder I hadn't opened in months. The screen's glow cast soft shadows across the concrete floor. The silence was thick. I sat cross-legged, laptop on my knees, and opened a blank document. On the top line, I wrote, "Timeline of attribution." I started listing dates. I didn't cry. Not that night. I wasn't sad, exactly, just clear. This was never about recognition, not for me. It was about building something no one could erase. And if they tried, well, I'd learn to keep records. Around midnight, I pulled a hoodie over my head, curled up on the small couch by the space heater, and let myself rest. The hum of the street outside was distant, like waves too far away to crash. Mom once told me, real change is built in silence. Then one day, it speaks for itself. Back in the present, I pulled up that same sanitized pitch deck, the one I had shared too willingly too early. The file name still had my initials, L Chen _V3 final, and that was far from the end. They ordered the risotto like it was a habit. Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m., same booth by the window, same practice laughs. I watched from the far end of the security feed. They didn't know I could see them. They never looked up at the discreet ceiling camera tucked into the wine rack. This restaurant, clean lines, brass finishes, soft jazz, humming under the clatter of silverware, was mine. Not the name on the menu, not the host's clipboard, but the line that ran through the lease agreement, the payroll system, the credit that paid for every bottle of imported Chardonnay. It had always been mine. Tasha knocked once and entered. No clipboard today, just her phone in hand and a faint smile. "They signed the final share transfer this morning," she said. "Clean. Every shell company synced. You're officially the only equity holder across all 6 holdings." I didn't look up right away. I was studying a cash flow chart. Then I minimized the tab, turned slightly, and nodded. "Any resistance?" "None that matters." She placed the phone on the desk, screen lit. A message waited at the top, from Evan. I picked it up, thumb hovering for a second before opening it. "Hey, thought you should see this." Attached was a screenshot, a text chain between Emily and her husband. "She's just the quiet one. Once Dad retires, the VP seat is mine. No way anyone takes Lauren seriously." I stared at it for a long second. The words didn't sting. They landed more like confirmation. Tasha waited silently. She never rushed me. "Start phase 1, I said. "Anonymous reporting, full access channel, route submissions to Reynolds through the internal shell. Use the HR audit tag. Soft launch." She nodded and left without asking for clarification. That's why I trusted her. The rest of the day passed in numbers. Login reports, expense audits, department summaries. By Friday morning, the inbox marked "Staff Feedback, Confidential" had 12 new entries. By noon, it had 62. Some were short. They call it family run, but we're not family, just cheaper labor. If you're not blood, you don't get invited to strategy meetings. Others were long, paragraphs, pages. Emily once joked during orientation that HR stood for her rules. She laughed. No one else did. I've worked here for 9 years. I've trained 3 managers who now outrank me. All of them went to Howard's house for barbecue last summer. I wasn't invited. She told me some women age out of relevance. I turned 50 last month. I read each one, slowly, no skipping, no skimming. Tasha brought tea in the afternoon, set it down without speaking. She knew the weight of what we were reading. This wasn't revenge. This was diagnosis. Quiet, careful truth-gathering. In one report, an intern described how she was removed from a project she proposed, replaced by someone more polished, she said, meaning someone with the right last name. Another described a company retreat where Howard dismissed an idea before the sentence even ended. He said I should leave leadership to people who had real stakes. He meant bloodline. Each line scratched something I'd buried years ago. Not rage, not even sadness, just the ache of recognition. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling to the last message submitted that day. It read, "I stayed because I thought someone like her would change things." That was all. No name, no department, no details. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking beneath the text. My office was quiet, lights low, the city outside soft in twilight. For a second, I felt the old weight, the one I'd carried for years, trying to be invisible enough to survive but loud enough to be useful. I closed the laptop gently. She was right, I whispered. Not to anyone, just to the air. The truth was finally speaking for itself. At 9:12 a.m., Emily's badge didn't unlock the elevator. She tried again, scanning slower this time, then harder, like pressure might change the outcome. Still nothing. Her heels tapped a sharp rhythm as she turned toward the receptionist with a forced smile. "Systems glitching," she said. Across the lobby, Howard walked in, pushing through the revolving door, brushing flakes of snow from his coat sleeve. His ID card, Vice President Emeritus, hadn't worked in the underground garage that morning, so he parked 3 blocks away. He didn't mention it. He assumed it was just bad luck. The building still wore traces of the holidays, silver ribbons looped around reception desks, leftover peppermint bowls on side tables. But the atmosphere was different now, like the place had exhaled and decided to stop pretending. From my office, I watched the logs appear one by one. Access denied. Emily Chen. Finance Tier 2. Server Howard Chen. Admin login attempt blocked. Emily Chen. Security override request. Rejected. Tasha entered with a small tablet in hand. "They've tried 6 times between them," she said, her tone neutral. "Let them keep trying," I replied. I stood by the window for a moment, watching the snow drift gently over the street below. Traffic lights blinked through frost. Across the street, our coffee vendor refilled his cart with steaming thermoses. I had met him once. His wife worked in our facilities department. When she had surgery last fall, our HR insurance denied a leave extension. Emily had told her, if we bend rules for one, we break them for all. I turned away from the window. Down the hall, Emily burst into HR, her voice clear even through 2 walls. "I want to speak to the head of security," she said. "Right now." Howard stormed in 10 minutes later, his jaw tight. He didn't knock. "What the hell is this?" I looked up from my screen, calm. "A compliance review," I said. "You always said accountability matters. We're taking it seriously." His eyes narrowed. "You're targeting your own family?" I closed my laptop slowly, then met his stare. "No," I said. "I'm documenting patterns." He stepped forward. "You think this is going to make you look strong? Firing questions at people who built this place?" I reached to my right and tapped a slim red folder on the edge of the desk. "You should check the VP conference room. Preliminary ethics findings just landed. Red tab." He didn't take it, just turned and stormed back out, slamming the door hard enough that the blinds on the glass wall shuddered. The whispers began that afternoon, in elevators, around copy machines, at the salad bar on the 12th floor. People started glancing toward HR as they walked past. Some paused when they saw the red folder. No one touched it. At 3 p.m., I walked the executive corridor for the first time in months. I passed the open plan marketing bay. A junior analyst I didn't recognize made eye contact and nodded. 2 more followed. Silent acknowledgments, like pebbles dropped into still water. They knew. By the time I returned to my office, Tasha had left a handwritten note on my desk. Board request, emergency closed-door session, Friday, 9 a.m., initiated by legal. I sat down and read the line twice. "They don't know who called it?" I asked. "They think it was external counsel," she said from the doorway. "They don't know you'll be leading it." I exhaled slowly. The shift was happening, not loudly, not all at once, but peace, by deliberate peace. Later that evening, after most of the building had cleared out, I walked the quiet hallway toward the VP suite. My footsteps echoed slightly. The holiday lights in the lobby had dimmed to their evening mode, soft and amber. The folder on the table was still untouched. I opened it. Inside, employee testimonies, compliance flags, patterns of exclusion. One memo ended with a sentence that stayed with me. She always walked past without raising her voice, but somehow you noticed. I closed the folder, placed it gently back on the table, and turned off the lights behind me. They once told me I didn't belong here. Today the system agreed, with evidence. They projected my slides onto a 20-foot screen trimmed in navy and gold. The animations were smoother now, the fonts updated, but I still recognized the bones of it. Every line, every sequence, every color code. They'd preserved the logic, the structure, the model. The only thing missing was my name. I stood near the back of the rooftop ballroom, half shadowed behind a marble column. No one noticed me. That had always been their gift, overlooking what didn't shine loud enough. I wore black slacks, a silk blouse, no makeup. My hair was pinned up neatly. I wasn't there to be seen. The room sparkled, literally. Glass pendant lights reflected off silverware and wine glasses. Waiters in white gloves moved like clockwork between tables. At the front of the room, a slideshow looped company milestones, mock-ups, office renovations, staged team-building shots. The caption under the product launch read, "Strategic Milestone, Emily Chen." She stood on stage just then, mid-speech, confident, crisp. "We took an idea," she said, "and made it scalable." That's the power of vision and commitment. Applause followed, measured, polite. Dad stepped forward next. His voice carried more weight, thicker from years of being listened to. "This company was built on family," he said. "Some of us led from the front. Some are still finding their place. But we believe in second wins. Lauren, keep going. You'll get there." There were a few chuckles, not unkind. Someone near me even whispered, "Aw," like I was the underdog in a holiday movie, and this was my uplifting soundtrack moment. I left before dessert. Outside, the wind had picked up. The rooftop elevator opened to an empty lobby, and I walked across the polished floor without looking back. The only sound was the soft clicking of my heels and the faint echo of violins far above. The next morning, I arrived at the tower before sunrise. Conference room 9B was already prepared, folders laid out evenly, water glasses filled. Tasha had arranged everything. She didn't need instructions anymore. One by one, board members filed in. They greeted each other in quiet tones, still carrying the warmth from last night's gala. Emily entered in a cream suit, makeup flawless. Howard walked in last, slightly rushed, the way people move when they sense something but can't name it. I remained seated at the head of the table. No one questioned it. Once the doors closed, I slid a folder to each of them. Ownership diagrams, shell company transfers, timestamp documentation. I let them read. Let the silence do the rest. After several minutes, the legal advisor at the far end cleared his throat. "These filings are legitimate," he said. "They show transfer of ownership to a consolidated trust structure, all under Lauren Chen's control." Howard scoffed. "This is theater." I tapped the table gently. A small speaker embedded beneath the wood came to life. Voices crackled through, familiar ones. "Some people age out of relevance," Emily's voice said, laughing faintly, "and don't even know it." Another voice, another day. If we keep letting outsiders in, what's left of the brand? I clicked pause. These recordings, I said, are part of an internal review. They reflect consistent breaches of our conduct code, specifically Clause 14. The legal advisor nodded. As per charter, Clause 14 requires immediate removal for any executive found to foster discriminatory or exclusionary practices, verbal or systemic. The chair of the board turned toward Howard and Emily. Your resignations, he said quietly, are expected before the end of the day. Emily stood up. This is personal. She's twisting things to make herself the hero. I stood too, calm. No, I said. You erased me to protect a myth. Now the truth erases you. Howard opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I gathered my notes, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked toward the door. My steps were slow, steady. I didn't turn around. As I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. She built it. They just stood in front of it. Attached was a side-by-side photo. On the left, an old snapshot from the warehouse, the founding team huddled around a whiteboard. I was blurred in the background. On the right, the same photo, edited. I was moved to the center, clear, focused. I stared at it for a moment, thumb resting on the screen. And then I smiled, not from triumph, but something quieter, something close to peace. The lobby was still quiet when I arrived. Late spring in Portland meant soft light through fogged windows, and the air smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon oil. I walked past the reception desk, coffee in hand, nodding at the security guard who now always looked up and smiled. There were no whispers in the elevators anymore, just greetings, small talk, the occasional chuckle about weekend plans. The hush had lifted, and with it, so had the weight that used to settle on my shoulders every time I stepped inside. My name was on the glass now, etched cleanly above the executive office door. Lauren Chen. No initials. No share. Sierra was already in the third-floor breakout room, tapping her pen against a notepad, waiting. She'd started as an intern 2 months ago. Bright, curious, slightly hesitant. Reminded me of myself once, full of questions but unsure where to place them. She stood when I entered. I wasn't sure if I was early. You're not, I said, taking the seat across from her. You're right on time. She hesitated, then asked, Do you ever wonder if people like us really belong at the table? I let the question hang for a moment, the kind of question that's more than words. It's a confession, a hope. They do, I said, but don't wait to be invited. Build the room if you have to. She nodded, eyes brighter, and we moved on to budgets and vendor protocols. But I saw it. The shift. The seed planted. Back in my office, a package waited. No return address. Brown paper, carefully taped. I opened it slowly. Inside, a bracelet I hadn't seen in years, and folded beneath it, a note in my mother's handwriting. The ink had faded, but her words still lived sharp on the page. Don't let them shrink you to fit their world. You were born to build your own. I read it 3 times, then I framed it. It hangs now above my desk, beside a photo of the old warehouse, before the paint and polish, when all I had was a folding table and a version of belief that nobody else could see. Near reception, etched into the glass wall where visitors check in, there's a new inscription. No brand slogan, no mission statement. Just a truth I've come to know. Some of us don't raise our voices. We build rooms where everyone else finally can. Tasha approved it last month. No one objected. I didn't post a victory speech. No statement to the press. No grand reveal. Instead, I walked the building that afternoon, floor by floor, pausing to talk, to listen. Some people nodded. Some smiled. A few just met my eyes and held the gaze a little longer than before. That was enough. Later, Evan forwarded me a note from an old colleague, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. I used to think staying quiet kept me safe. Then I saw what happened when someone like you finally spoke. I didn't reply. I just read it and let the stillness settle in my chest. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh document. No charts, no code, just one simple heading: Mentorship Program, Application Draft. Beneath it, one question: what's the story you haven't been allowed to tell? Sometimes the quietest victories are the ones that echo longest. I never raised my voice, but the truth found its way to every corner it needed to reach. We don't always get the credit we deserve when we deserve it, but that doesn't mean we stop doing what's right. Respect, like light, has a way of showing up, especially when it's been missing too long. And in the end, building something that lasts means leaving space for others to rise too. If this story reminded you of a moment when you stood alone but stood firm, I hope you'll share it. Sometimes our quietest truths are the ones that help others find their voice.